The most feared man in Seoul had just slid a ring onto her finger, and the first thing he whispered was, "Not I love you." He leaned in until his mouth nearly touched her ear, and what he said, low and calm and certain, was, "Do not let go of my hand, or you will be dead before this song ends." Zola Diallo did not move. She could not. A second ago, she had been arranging their flowers, invisible, the hired help in a room full of people who had spent the whole night reminding her exactly what she was. Now the most dangerous man in the city was holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping the floor from opening, and he had just told her she was going to die. The whole ballroom had stopped breathing with her. 300 of the most powerful people in Seoul, frozen mid-laugh, mid-sip, mid-cruelty, every face turned toward the impossible thing happening in the center of the floor. And the cruelest part, the part Zola would remember for the rest of her life, was that 60 seconds ago these same people had been laughing at her. It had been Bridget Hale who started it, the way it was always Bridget. "A man like Kang Min-jae does not marry someone like her," she had said, soft and smiling, just minutes ago, and the whole circle of bridesmaids had laughed into their champagne. Now Bridget's smile was sliding off her face like wet paint, and Helena Cross had a hand pressed over her mouth, and not one of them was laughing anymore. But Min-jae was not looking at any of them. While the room stared at the ring, his eyes were moving, slow and methodical, across the faces near the walls. He was not a man savoring a moment. He was a man counting exits. His thumb pressed once, hard, against the back of Zola's hand, a silent order. Stay. And every nerve in her body understood that whatever was happening here, the ring was the smallest part of it. If your heart is already pounding, if you need to know what he is looking for, do something for the people who make stories like this. Tap that subscribe button, not because anyone is begging you to, but because it quietly tells Afro-Korean Soulmate TV that the woman this whole room underestimated is worth following all the way down. That one tap is the only reason stories this dangerous get made. Now stay close, because the man by the pillar just moved. There, by the third pillar. A man Zola had never seen, in a suit that did not fit the room, with a hand disappearing slowly into his jacket and eyes that had found her and would not let go. Her breath turned to glass in her throat. She did not know how she knew. She simply knew, the way an animal knows, that the man by the pillar had come here tonight to end her. And by the side doors stood another man, this one carved from stone, with a scar down his neck and eyes that missed nothing. He was not with the man by the pillar, he was watching the man by the pillar. When his gaze flicked to Min-jae, something passed between them, fast and silent, the language of people who have stayed alive together for a long time. Min-jae's jaw tightened a fraction. The stone-faced man at the door gave the smallest nod. Min-jae drew her in, close enough that to the watching room it looked like a lover's murmur. It was not. "Smile," he breathed against her ear. "Right now. Like you are the happiest woman alive, because the only reason that man has not already pulled the trigger is that he cannot do it in front of 300 witnesses while you wear my ring. The moment they think you are nobody to me, you die. So for the next 4 minutes, you are going to be the most adored woman in Seoul." So she smiled. God help her, she smiled like her life depended on it, because it did. She lifted her chin and let her hand settle on his arm and turned the full warmth of her face toward a room that had spent all night deciding she was beneath it. And the strangest thing happened. They believed it. The same people who had laughed now leaned in, hungry, charmed, rewriting the story in real time, because that is what rooms like this always do. The only person who did not believe it was the man by the pillar whose hand was still inside his jacket. It was then, with her heart going at a number she could have sworn was past 200, that his earlier words came back to her and made no sense at all. "You kept your mother's necklace," he had said, before the ring, before the threat. The thin gold chain was tucked under her collar where no living person could see it. She had never met Kang Min-jae, she was certain of it. So how did a stranger know about the one thing she had carried out of the worst night of her childhood? She turned to demand an answer, and caught his face in the half-second before he could hide it. The cold was gone. For one breath, the most feared man in Seoul looked at her like a man looking at something he had lost a very long time ago and never expected to see again, something he had torn the world apart searching for. Then the mask came down, hard, and he was a stranger again. But Zola had seen it, and now she had 2 impossible questions instead of 1. "We are leaving," he said under his breath, his hand settling warm against the small of her back. "Walk with me like this was always the plan, like you have done it 100 times." and do not look at the pillar again." Zola moved because her body obeyed him before her mind could argue. The crowd opened in front of them and closed behind, hungry whispers rising in their wake, and she felt every eye and soul follow the woman the most dangerous man in the room had chosen. And then it hit her, the scar above his eyebrow, the exact tilt of a head she had not seen in 11 years, a storeroom that smelled of dust and fear, gunfire cracking somewhere in the house, and a shaking Korean boy she had pulled into the dark and covered with her own small body while men hunted both their families through the rooms above. She had held his hand until the screaming stopped. She had never known if he lived. The name came up from somewhere so deep she had buried it on purpose. Min-jae. The boy in the storeroom. The boy she had cried over for years, certain he was one more person the world had taken from her. He had lived. He had grown into this, into terror and power and a tailored suit, and he had walked across a room full of people to find the girl who once kept him breathing. If your chest is tight right now, if you are feeling all of this with her, prove you are still here. Drop one emoji in the comments that matches exactly how your heart feels in this moment. And tell me where in the world you are watching from and what time it is where you sit, because someone out there is watching this at 3 in the morning, unable to look away. If you are on your TV, reach over and hit that like button so I know you are in the room with us. Then come right back, because Bridget is not finished, and neither is the man by the pillar. He felt her recognition like a current and answered it without a word. From inside his jacket he drew something old and soft with handling and let her see it for 1 second before it vanished again. A photograph. 2 children, her and him, impossibly young, the necklace already at her throat. He had carried it for 11 years. The most feared man in Seoul had been searching for her since they were children, and tonight finally, he had found her. Then a voice cut across the room like a blade, and the moment shattered. Bridget stepped into their path, and the whole room felt it. "You do not get to do this," she hissed, loud enough now for everyone, her composure finally cracking down the center. "You are promised to me. Both our families agreed. Everyone here knows it. And you humiliate all of us for the help." Her voice climbed into something ugly and shaking. For her. Min-jae did not raise his voice. He never had to. He turned to the room, slow and certain, and let the silence stretch until it hurt. "You have all made a mistake tonight," he said. "You looked at this woman and decided what she was. So let me correct you. She is not the help. She is not my fiancé." He paused, and the pause was a blade held to 300 throats. "She is my wife. She has been my wife for 11 years. The room came apart. 300 people who thought they understood the world they lived in discovered all at once that they did not. The word wife moved through the crowd like a shockwave, mouth to mouth, and somewhere a woman actually screamed. Bridget had gone the color of the marble under her heels. And Min-jae, watching the chaos he had made, delivered the line that would haunt every person in that room. "There is a contract," Min-jae said, "signed the same week our families were torn apart, when we were 17, registered and buried where no one would think to look. And the person who signed it as our witness, the person who has known the truth this entire time and watched all of you laugh at her anyway, is standing in this room tonight." His eyes moved to a single face in the crowd, and that face went bloodless. He did not say the name. He did not have to. But Zola followed his gaze, and what she saw there stopped her heart. But she never got the chance to understand it, because the man by the pillar had seen his window close. The witness was exposed, the room was chaos, and his orders did not care about witnesses anymore. His hand came out of his jacket fast, and this time there was no hiding what was in it. Someone in the crowd saw it, and the first true scream of the night tore the ballroom open. The stone-faced man at the door was already moving. He crossed the ballroom faster than a man that size should be able to move, slamming into the gunman just as the first shot cracked the air and a chandelier above them burst into a rain of falling crystal. The room dissolved into screaming and stampede, gowns and tuxedos crushing toward every exit at once, and in the middle of it all, Min-jae turned and wrapped his body around Zola like a wall. His arm was iron around her head, his body the only thing between her and the room coming apart. Down, he ordered against her hair, and they moved together low and fast along the wall while the crowd shrieked and surged. Zola's pulse was a scream in her own ears. 11 years she had wondered if the boy from the storeroom survived, and here he was, shielding her with his life inside a different nightmare, as if the two of them were cursed to keep finding each other only in the worst moments of their lives. They burst out of a service door into the rain, into a back street where a black SUV sat waiting with its engine running and a door already open, as though Min-jae had planned an escape before he ever walked into that ballroom. Of course he had. Behind them the gunfire had stopped, which somehow felt worse than if it had continued. He pushed her into the back seat and slid in after her, and the car was already moving before the door had finished closing. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The city smeared past the windows in ribbons of wet light. Zola stared at the ring on her own shaking hand, at the man beside her who was a stranger and the oldest friend she had ever had at the same time, and finally she found her voice. "Who were those men?" she whispered. Min-jae did not look at her. "They work for the same person who came for our families 11 years ago," he said quietly. He never stopped. "And tonight, by finding you, I led him straight to the one person I have spent my whole life trying to keep him from." By the time the sky began to gray, they were moving through the cavern of Incheon Airport, and Zola felt as though she were watching her own life from somewhere outside it. Junwoo met them at a private entrance, a scar down his neck and a small bag in his hand, and pressed 2 passports and 2 boarding passes into Min-jae's palm without a word. She caught her own face in one of the passports, her own name, a document she had never applied for that had existed apparently for years. Junwoo leaned close and said something low and fast that made Min-jae's face change. Zola caught only fragments, but she caught enough. They knew about the airport, about the flight. Someone close to Min-jae had told them, which meant the danger was not only behind them in a ruined ballroom. It was here, it was ahead of them, and worst of all, it wore a face they trusted. But there was no time to chase the thought. A jet waited on the tarmac, dark against a thin gold dawn, its stairs already lowered like an open hand. Min-jae took her elbow and walked her toward it, away from the only city she had ever called home, toward a country she had never seen, with nothing but the clothes she had worn to serve other people's champagne, and a ring she had not chosen weighing down her hand. For hours she watched the clouds and tried to assemble the pieces. The boy she saved, the contract she never signed or thought she never signed, a husband she had met for the first time 12 hours ago and known her whole life. Somewhere over the dark belly of the world, Min-jae finally came and sat across from her, and for the first time the cold left his face entirely. "Our parents were business partners," he said. "Friends, until a man decided he wanted everything they had built and sent people to take it the night you found me in that storeroom. They bound us together with that contract because they thought, if the worst happened, being tied to my family would protect you. Then the worst happened, and we were scattered, and I lost you." He looked at her like the words cost him something. "I have been looking for you for 11 years, Zola. I built everything I am out of one promise, that I would find you, and the next time, I would be the one strong enough to protect you." Something in Zola that had been clenched tight for 11 years finally, dangerously, began to loosen. She had spent her whole life being the one who survived alone, who needed no one, who smiled at the flowers and never at the people. And here was someone telling her she had been searched for, that she had mattered to somebody across an entire decade and an entire world. She did not let herself cry, not yet, but it was a very near thing. The jet came down over a coastline that looked unreal, a stretch of the French Riviera where the sea went on forever and a villa of warm stone clung to a cliff above it. For one full day nothing tried to kill them. Min-jae gave her clothes, space, silence, anything she asked for, and 100 things she did not. And slowly, in the golden light of a place neither of their enemies knew, something between them began to grow back that had been cut down when they were children. That second evening she stood on the terrace in a deep burgundy dress he had chosen, watching the sun bleed into the water, and she felt almost like a person again, almost like a woman who had not spent her whole life bracing for the next blow. She heard him come out behind her and did not turn, and the silence between them was not empty. It was full of 11 years of things neither of them had ever gotten to say. He had changed too, out of the armor of his suit into something softer, and the danger in him had gone quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "I used to think about you every single day," he said. "The girl who covered me with her own body when she was 10 years old. I told myself if I ever found you, I would never let the world make you feel small again." He stepped closer, and then I walked into that ballroom and watched them do exactly that, and I have never wanted to burn a room to the ground so badly in my life. His hand came up slowly, giving her every chance to step away, and curved against her cheek. Zola did not step away. For the first time in 11 years, she let herself be held by someone who had chosen her on purpose, in front of everyone, against everything. The space between their mouths shrank to nothing, and in the exact instant that the years finally collapsed and she let her eyes drift shut, her phone lit up on the stone railing with a name that should not have been able to reach her here. Helena. Zola pulled back, heart lurching. Helena Cross, the bridesmaid who laughed when Bridget laughed, who had no possible way of having her private number, who belonged to the world they had just fled across the planet to escape. Min-jae's whole body went still and alert. "Answer it," he said softly, and put it on speaker. Zola's thumb hovered, then pressed, and Helena's voice came through the little speaker, broken and terrified, and whispering so low they could barely hear it. "I do not have long," Helena breathed. "I should not be calling, but I cannot live with it anymore. Zola, the things they said about you, the gala, all of it, none of it was an accident. Bridget did not pick you to humiliate by chance. She was sent." Her voice cracked. "Bridget is not who she says she is. Her real father is the man who destroyed your family 11 years ago. And he is not dead, Zola. He has been alive this whole time, and he is the one hunting you both." The line went dead. Out on the black water below, the lights of a yacht waited. The boat Min-jae had arranged to move them again at first light, and now it looked less like an escape and more like a trap closing. Bridget's father. The man from the storeroom night, the architect of every loss Zola had ever carried, had not died in the fire that took her family. He had raised a daughter to grow up beautiful and poised and patient, and to walk into a ballroom 11 years later and humiliate the orphan he had made as the opening move of a hunt. "You knew," Zola said, and it was not a question. The look on Min-jae's face was answer enough. "I knew he was alive," he admitted, the words rough. "I did not know Bridget was his. I swear to you I did not." He turned to her, and there was something desperate in him now. "Zola, there is more. There is a part of that night I have never told anyone, a part I have spent 11 years protecting you from." He reached for her hands, but before he could say it, his phone buzzed against the railing, and whatever he saw on that screen drained the blood from his face. He read whatever it said 3 times. Zola watched the strongest man she had ever known turn to something hollow in the space of a single breath. Whatever those words on the screen meant, they were worse than gunmen, worse than Bridget, worse than anything that had come before. He looked up at her, and for the first time since the ballroom, Kang Min-jae looked afraid. "We have to go," he said, "right now. Not the yacht, there is a train." They drove through the dark to the train station with no explanation, and Zola's questions died one by one against the wall of his silence. Whatever he had read, he would not show her. Whatever he had decided alone. By the time they reached the platform under its great arched roof, a sleek night train sat waiting with its doors open and its windows lit, and Min-jae held a single ticket in his hand. 1 ticket, not 2. "What is happening?" she whispered. "Why is there only 1 ticket?" He would not answer that either. Instead, he took her face in both his hands, gently, the way you hold something you are about to lose, and his eyes were wet in a way she had never imagined the most feared man in Seoul could be. "I need you to forgive me," he said, "for what I did that night, for what I am about to do now. There is only one way to keep you alive, and it means I cannot be the one standing next to you when the dust settles." He pulled her in against him, and the whole world narrowed to the warmth of his breath at her ear. And then Kang Min-jae whispered 5 words, 5 quiet words, so low that no camera could have caught them, so impossible that Zola's mind refused them even as she heard them. 5 words that took the floor out from under her and turned everything she thought she had finally understood into a lie. Her knees nearly gave. She grabbed his coat. "No," she said, "no, that is not possible." But he was already pulling her hands from his coat, already stepping back, already becoming a stranger again the way he had in the ballroom, because the cold was the only armor he had ever owned. He pressed the single ticket into her palm and folded her fingers over it. "Live," he said. "That is the only thing I have ever asked of you." Then he turned, and he stepped up onto the train alone, and Zola stood frozen on the platform with 5 impossible words ringing in her skull. She lunged for him as the doors began to close. Her fingers hit cold glass. Through it, she could see him standing in the carriage with his back straight and his jaw set, refusing to turn around, because if he turned around, he would not be able to do this. The doors sealed with a soft, final hiss, and it was in that exact moment, as her own reflection blurred against the glass, that Zola saw the person seated in the row directly behind him, a woman. older now, her hair gone soft and gray at the temples, a dark coat buttoned to her throat, a woman whose face Zola had last seen going still in her own arms on the worst night of her childhood, the woman she had buried, the woman whose necklace she had worn against her skin every single day for 11 years. Her mother, alive, sitting calmly behind Min-jae as though she had been there all along. And as the train began to move, the woman who could not possibly be alive looked directly through the glass at Zola, and she smiled. The train pulled away into the dark, carrying the man who had found her after 11 years and the mother she had grieved for just as long, leaving Zola alone on an empty platform with a crushed ticket in her fist, a necklace burning against her chest, and 5 whispered words detonating over and over in her mind. Nothing she had believed about that night was true. Nothing she had believed about herself was true. And the 2 people who held every answer were vanishing down the track together, leaving her holding the one question that changes everything. And there it is. The door nobody thought would ever open, swinging wide, with a truth on the other side that rewrites who Zola was the entire time. But that truth does not belong to this part. If you need to know what Min-jae whispered before the doors closed, if you need to know how a dead woman is sitting on that train, you already know what to do. Go down to the comments and demand part 2, loud enough that I cannot pretend I did not hear you. The more of you who ask, the faster it comes. Say the words, part 2, and I will bring you the rest.